Hi everyone, and welcome back. Have we got a session for you today? Well, obviously we have, because I'm here looking at you. But seriously, we've got an amazing subject matter for our poetry today. And that subject matter is food. Food that remind us of a particular person in our lives. Now, why are we doing that? Because everyone loves food more than they love people. Joking. We're doing it because food is a great way to conjure up emotive reactions inside our poetry writing. It takes us back quickly, like a TARDIS, and can just travel through time when we think about food and smells and textures and colours. So, I'm going to start us off with a little story. Now, when I was really young, I'm still young, but really young, like 12, 13, I used to go scrumping with my friends. Now, scrumping, I don't think most of you young people understand what that is, but I'll try to explain. Scrumping is basically this. You're walking along the streets with your friends and you notice an apple tree. The apple tree is growing freely, but not in your garden. So you decide to hop over the fence, protecting the apple tree. Now, don't try this at home. It's not cool anymore to do this. And it wasn't cool then, but we did it anyway. You hop over the fence, you grab a couple of apples, stuff them into your t-shirt and jump back over the fence, share them with your friends and run away laughing. Now, I know some of you are thinking, that's stealing. Well, it's not. Back then, we called it borrowing without returning. Now, I want you to be clear. You must not, I repeat, not try this technique at home. But why I shared the story? Because we used to love scrumping, going around and eating apples wherever we could find them. And when I was about 6, maybe even 7, I took a plane for the very first time, left my home in Luton, travelled to the airport. Obviously, this is before the train. I got the car, then I got the plane. And we flew to the wonderful island of St Vincent, where my father was born. And we spent a few weeks out there. And whilst there, we went scrumping because there's lots of fruit trees growing wildly. And we came across this piece of land and there was lots of my number one fruit, which is mangoes, growing freely. So my cousins and I, we clambered up the little hill and my cousin climbed up the tree because he was a great climber and started throwing these mangoes down, licking them down, and we're catching them, like we're catching manna from heaven. And we stuffed them in our t-shirts. And as we're doing this, the man who owns the land comes out and says, "Get off my land, you thieving wretches," and kind of shakes his stick at us, because he had a stick. And we kind of ran away laughing. He wasn't going to do us no harm, he was just going to scare us off the land. So he ran away laughing. And I can still remember the smell of those sweet mangoes tucked into my t-shirt. And I was laughing so much with my cousins that we were literally crying tears, and the tears ran down into the mangoes in my pregnant t-shirt. And the smell of those mangoes still lingers with me today. So today, when I go into the supermarket and I see those things they call mangoes shriveled up on the shelf, I know they're not real mangoes, because I was lucky enough to taste real mangoes from the soil. So here's my poem about my journey to the Caribbean for the first time as a little boy with my family and my encounter with the mangoes. So yet again, I want you to become a detective, hunting, searching for your next vital clue. So when I read the poem, I like it to scribble down on the paper as many different techniques, devices I use to get my idea across. If I use a simile, write it down. You might even remember to write the line down that I say. That's fine. If I use a metaphor, if I say something is something, write it down. If I use personification, write it down. See how many devices and techniques you can grab from this poem. Make a note of them on your paper. You can either write down the technique, and if you're really quick, write down the actual line or part of the line that I say. Let's see how you get on. So the piece is called When I'm Eating Julie Mangoes. When I'm eating Julie mangoes, I return to my childhood. 7 years old, not much to say. taking a plane for the very first time, sucking mints to free my ears, whilst holding mummy's hands when my brothers aren't looking. When I'm eating Julie mangoes, I see my father catching the St Vincent sun, as if he were playing cricket. I watch him push a ripe breadfruit into the open furnace in the garden. The smoke serenades the bedroom where he was born. When I'm eating Julie mangoes, I don't hear yellow bird or pie and banana tree. No, I hear get off my land, you thieving wretches, and the music of my cousins and brothers' bare feet slapping the dry road home. Our t-shirts pregnant with mangoes borrowed from a greedy man's garden. When I'm eating Julie mangoes, I don't taste the hairy flesh, sweeter than candy floss yet strong like string. No, I taste the Caribbean Sea as I splutter and cough like an engine on a cold morning. You see, when I'm eating my Julie mangoes, I don't smell roses or honey. I smell charcoal burning, breadfruit roasting, saltfish frying, cornmeal boiling, and first rain falling, and Uncle Clyde's laughter. Yes, my uncle's laughter smells. It smells like Julie mangoes with a hint of rum. Now, I wonder how many ideas you got from that poem, how many poetry devices I used. So have a look for your list. Have a look for some of the lines you wrote down as well. I'll give you a few seconds to do that now. Just to finish off your notes about the devices I used. I used similes, I used metaphors. And did you get any lines? And if you want, maybe you could share those ideas with someone in your house. Share it with one of your parents or with your brother or sister. Things you managed to capture as a true detective from my poem. Now, if I go back over the poem, let's have a look at the poem in more detail and see if you found some of the things that I used, the devices. So, I used a lot of metaphor and simile, but the thing that was driving the poem was the use of the 5 senses. Sucking mints to free my ears, the taste of mint. I see my father catching the St Vincent sun. You can't catch the sun, but as a poet I can do that. He caught the sun and he turned it into a cricket ball, playing cricket in the garden. I also talked about the smoke, watching the smoke serenade the bedroom where he was born. Now, to serenade something, you're serenading a human being. It's to sing a song of praise to someone. You know, a love song or something like that. But I talked about the smoke serenading the wall as it climbed up the wall. What do you call that? Yeah, personification. Giving something that's not alive human qualities. What else do we do? Talked about the sound of our feet slapping the dry road home when the man came out and said, "Get off my land, you thieving wretches." So many different devices in that poem just to really draw you into the world of being in the Caribbean as a young boy and witnessing all these beautiful things and sights and all this sense of adventure. Now, what I'd like you to do for the challenge today is think about a food that links to a person. So that whenever you see that food, smell that food, taste that food, it reminds you of that person. So it could be like rice. Whenever I see rice, I think of my grandma, because she used to make the rice. Now the poem is not about the rice, really. The poem is really about the relationship between you and your grandma. Because every time you see rice or smell rice, it reminds you of grandma. The way she stood, maybe. The way she moved around the house. The smell of the house. I want us to go back to the idea that I went back to in my poem, the 5 senses, using your magical 5 senses. Taste, smell, feel, touch. Use all of your 5 senses to describe what was happening at that time with the food and the person in your story. Now that you've had the chance to think about a person you'd like to write about in your poem that links to a particular food, every time you see that food or smell that food, you think of that person, let's begin the poem. But before we jump into actually writing the poem, let me show you this wonderful idea, this table of mine that's going to help us gather all the ingredients for the poem. So we need a piece of paper. I've got my marker. You got your pen. Let's dance. So I'm going to draw my table, and my table is just basically my 5 senses table. So along the top, I'm going to put taste, feel, smell, look, sound. Taste, feel, smell, look, and sound. Sounds good to me? 5 senses. Oh, by the way, joke. There is a 6th sense. Anyone know what that 6th sense is? Yeah, you got it. Common sense. Haha. There you go. All right, wasn't very good. Let's stick to the poetry. So my table looks a bit like this. Here's my table. Now W stands for word. And my key word in my poem is mango. So that goes in the first box. Then I've got my taste box, my feel box, my, can't see it that way, smell box, my look box, and my sound box. And all we're going to do, we're going to go back to that time. That moment of your auntie cooking that food for you, that rice, or your dad taking you out to the chicken shop. And remember our 5 senses around that time. So for me, going back to the Caribbean, I remember the taste of the mince on the plane. So I put down mince. I also remember the taste of thyme. I didn't mention it in my poem, but my auntie loved to make soup. And in the soup, she put thyme. Not actual thyme like my watch time, thyme the herb. And I remember that taste. So I put that down on my list as well, thyme. Then I'll move on to my feel. What I remember feeling. Well, part of my story is I remember feeling my feet slapping the dry road home after running away from that man who was angry because we were taking his mangoes. So under my feel box, inside my feel box, I'll put feel of my feet slapping the dry road home. What I'd like you to do is go through your story, your memory of that food and that person. So you write down the tastes you remember. Not the taste of the actual food, but other tastes, like you might be drinking a can of Coke or drinking water. What smells do you remember? It might have been a flower, might be the smell of the house, might be the smell of the garden. Put that in the box. What things do you remember feeling? I remember the feel of my feet hitting the ground, but what do you remember? So go through your table, filling in at least 2 or 3 ideas per box. A couple of ideas for the taste and the feel and the smell, the look and the sound. That gives us our ammunition for our poem. So I'm presuming your table is now complete. Mine is not, but I've already done my poem. Now, once your table is complete, you've got at least 2 or 3 ideas in each box. You're ready to commence the spinning of the clay. And you're thinking, spinning of the clay? What's that? Well, I always use the analogy of you're a potter with your lump of clay at this stage. All your ingredients, and you dollop it onto the spinning wheel and you pump away with your foot and it spins, and you take your hands, you guide it up and down until it takes form and makes a beautiful vase or a cup, whatever you want to make. So now let's spin that clay. Let's spin that clay and make a poem. So you could, if you wanted to, and you don't have to, adopt my poetry technique of starting with the repetitive line of, when I'm eating Julie mangoes. And then all you do is go to your diagram and take one of your senses. I remember the taste of the thyme in the soup. I remember the feel of the wood on the hard floorboard in Nana's house. I remember the smell of the mothballs coming from her bedroom. I remember the look of the cat peering into my eyes first thing in the morning. And I remember the sound of the mice gnawing away under the floorboards. Bit of drama for you there. So top tips. Try your very best to incorporate all of your 5 senses in the poem. By all means, put your similes and metaphors and your personification in there as well, but drive the poem with your senses. That's what takes us through the journey. Think about your completion. Think about your last line. How do you want to leave the audience or the reader? Do you want to leave them with a sense of, I can relate to that? Or a sense of, I didn't expect that to happen? A sense of surprise, a little twist? Do you want to leave them thinking, wow, that's a revelation, I didn't know that? So really think about what you want to leave or where you want to leave the person with your poem. That's really important. Once your poem's complete and you're happy with it, share. Share it with your family. If you can get it into your school, that's wonderful. If you send it into your school, that's wonderful because they can then email it to us at www.otherwiseeducation.com. But share it. Whether you're sharing to your brothers and your sisters and your mother and your father, that's fine. But share your work. Okay. See you all again soon at the next lesson. Bye.